So I found this adorable sign at the Dollar Tree, and I decided that I wanted to make something that would be great for a tiered tray or on a shelf. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start out by using some blue painter's tape, and we're just going to tape off the chalkboard piece of our sign. Next, I grab my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and using a round brush, I'm just going to brush all of the frame on the front and the back side of this sign. So once the paint has completely dried, we're going to go ahead and flip this sign over, and we're going to decorate the back side of this sign as well as the front sign, making it nice and reversible. For this back piece, I want to decoupage on this. So we're going to start out by using that Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster again, and just paint a nice coat on the back side of this sign. Now let's let that paint dry, and once that paint has completely dried, we're going to grab some Mod Podge, and I'm going to paint a nice coat of Mod Podge over the top of this paint. And we're not going to let the Mod Podge completely dry. We're going to go ahead and grab our napkin, and we're only going to use the top layer of the napkin. And I cut a piece slightly bigger than the sign, and I'm just going to set that on top of the wet Mod Podge on this sign. Now you can just tap the napkin down into the sign, or I had a nice little rubber roller that I was able to use that fit perfect in the sign. But if you don't have one of these, that is fine. One other trick would be using some saran wrap and tapping everything down. And once your Mod Podge has dried, I go ahead and use a razor blade and remove any extra napkin. Now we want to seal this in, so I'm using another layer of Mod Podge over the top of the napkin. Now once all of this has dried, we're going to flip the sign over and start on the front side of the sign. And we're starting out by just removing the painter's tape that was there earlier. And I got this wonderful stencil on Amazon in a 6-pack, and we're going to use the one that says Welcome Winter. And once we have our stencil in place, I'm going to use some chalk paste in the color Vintage Lace, and we're going to squeegee some of this paste over the top of the stencil. I just love how the white sticks out on the black here. It's just so classic and farmhouse, but it's just adorable. I love it. Next, I go ahead and hot glue a little bow in the corner to finish the front of the sign. Now let's go ahead and flip the sign over and finish the back side of this sign. So we're taking an ornament that I got at the Dollar Tree, and it's a beautiful snowflake ornament. And what I'm going to do here is I'm using my pliers, and I'm just going to remove the little loop that hooked the string on it to make it an ornament. So we're going to grab our hot glue and hot glue this snowflake onto the back side of this sign. And I just love how this gives a 3-dimensional look to our sign. Now this sign is ready to display on your tiered tray or on a shelf. But I just love how this turns out. Either side could be the front or the back. It's just amazing. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So for this craft, we're starting out with a foam ball, and you only need one of these. And it's a little over 1.5 inches, might be a 2-inch in circumference ball. Not exactly sure how they measure those. But I did get this at either the Dollar Tree or at Walmart. I am not sure which one. And I'm using a small wood dowel that I did get at the Dollar Tree in like a 10-pack. And I just inserted one of those into the balls. And this adorable pick was from the Dollar Tree. It was their mistletoe pick. And I absolutely love this pick. I wish I could have gotten more pieces, but I went to the store way too late. And I missed out on getting more, so that's why I am making this small little topiary with this one pick that I did have. So for this topiary, I cut each of the branches off of the pick, and then I cut each of the branches in half. And so then that way I got 2 little picks per branch. And if the branch was really long, some of them I was able to get 3 little picks off of each branch. What I started doing was just inserting each of the little picks into the ball randomly throughout. I was so close to being able to finish the whole topiary with one pick, but I did need a little bit of extra, so I used a boxwood pick from Walmart, and I just cut the little leaf sets off of that and use that to fill in any of the holes that I found in the topiary. So with the greenery complete, we're going to go ahead and set that aside. I have this small clay pot that I'm going to use for putting our topiary in, and I wanted to give this a little bit more of a winter look, so we're going to use our Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And I'm just using that round brush again and just dry brushing all around the outside of the pot. And once we've gotten the pot completely covered, I'm going to just do the base of the pot, and then I will do the inside rim of the pot just in case that shows. And while we have the paint out, we're just going to go ahead and paint the dowel for our little topiary as well. To help the dowel and the topiary stand up, I'm using a piece of floral foam, and I'm just cutting it small enough to be able to fit tightly into that pot. To cover the floral foam, I'm going to use Spanish moss and a little bit of polyfill and mix them together so it looks like it has a small layer of snow. So now we're going to grab our hot glue gun and just glue our little snow pile into our clay pot. Next, it's time to make an embellishment. We're going to make a cute little bow to put on our topiary. I'm starting out with a 6-inch piece of ribbon, and we're going to cut another piece of ribbon at 5 inches. We will also need a small piece of pipe cleaner. So we're going to start out with the 6-inch piece of ribbon, and we're going to fold that into a V shape. Next, we're going to grab our 5-inch ribbon, and we're just going to make a little loop and hot glue the loop together. Next, we're going to stack the loop on top of the V, and using our pipe cleaner, we're going to scrunch these two items together and use the pipe cleaner to twist and tighten the little bow into a nice little shape. Now, let's go ahead and grab our ribbon and cut another piece about 1.5 inches in length. I fold this in half, and I'm just going to hot glue it to make sure it stays into place. And then we'll take that little piece of ribbon and we're going to wrap that around the center of the bow. And this will cover the pipe cleaner and finish the bow in the center. Now for the last step, I'm going to dovetail the ends of my bow, and I'm going to remove the little piece of pipe cleaner since I'm going to be hot gluing the bow. But if you were going to be attaching this in another way to your design, keeping that pipe cleaner there is a great tool. Now is the fun part. Let's put everything together. I'm going to put the topiary into the floral foam in the clay pot. And now we're going to hot glue the bow to the topiary. And I decided that I liked the way that the bow looked on the pot, but you could put the bow anywhere you wish. Remember, if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more creative craft ideas, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you'll never miss an update. We can't wait to see you in the next video. Next up, an adorable winter sign. So we're going to start with this black background sign that I found at the Dollar Tree. It's absolutely perfect for this, and it makes crafting so easy. And we're using 2 of these stencils, and I'm just going to use pieces of the stencil, the word winter and the word kiss, because I want it to say winter kisses. Next, I'll grab my redesigned chalk paste, and we're going to use that to squeegee over those 2 words on the stencil. And to keep with the theme of the winter snowflakes, I'm using the vintage lace for the color for our chalk paste. And this turns out so cute. I love the different fonts with the words, and I think it just really makes it stand out. The next step I'm going to do to fill in the bottom here is I'm taking a round brush, and I'm using the chalk paste as well because I want it to be the exact same color. And we're just going to add some snow to the bottom of our sign. Once your paint has completely dried, I use my Jolene finishing wax to seal everything in. So now let's fill in the sign. I'm going to use this fun snowflake ornament from the Dollar Tree, and we're just going to cut the little circle hook off of that piece of ornament because we want it to just be the snowflake. Next, we're going to take some hot glue and we're going to hot glue this snowflake right into place onto the sign. So with all this talk about snowflakes, have you seen any snowflakes this year? Let me know in the comments below. And now for our last little embellishment, some snowflake ribbon in a bow in the other corner of the sign. This stunning little sign is perfect to hang for the winter season. So the Dollar Tree always has these fun snowflakes each year, and I had these wood home letters in my stash from Dollar Tree last spring, and we'll put this together with a fun napkin from Home Goods this season that's all snowflakes. So let's start out with these wood letters. I'm using some blue painter's tape, and I'm just going to make a little loop and put that on the back sides of these letters. And we are just taping down the letters so that it will be easier to paint. And we do want to paint both sides, the front and the back. And for the painting, I'm using Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. So while that paint is drying, let's go ahead and start working on our snowflake. So for this snowflake, I'm starting out with the Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And I'm just going to give a nice coat over the whole entire snowflake. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's okay if you see a little bit of the brown through it because you do want it to be a little bit rustic. And now I'll go back to my letters and I'm just going to flip them back over and paint the other side with our Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. Now moving back to our snowflake, I'm using some Waverly chalk paint in the color Truffle, and I'm just lightly dry brushing some darker colors onto our snowflake. And once I've completed that, I'm going to go back over with my Plaster colored paint. This will allow me to tone everything down a little bit. Now while that's drying, let's go back to our letters. I grab my Mod Podge and I'm going to do a nice coat of Mod Podge over the top of these letters. And a quick thank you for viewing my crafting channel. Your support fuels my passion for crafting and I look forward to bringing you guys more exciting videos. Please let me know in the comments below if there's something you'd like to see. Now once that Mod Podge is completely dry, I'm taking my napkin here and we're just going to remove the bottom two layers of the napkin. All we'd like to use is that top layer. And I'm going to cut out a few little squares that will fit nice over the top of these letters. And I did strategically cut these out so that certain snowflakes would be like at the top of each one of these letters. Once you're satisfied, grab a piece of parchment paper and a hot iron and iron your napkins into place. Now for our next step, we're going to grab some Mod Podge and we're going to Mod Podge the napkins on the top of the wood panels. Don't worry about the edges. We're going to get those here in a few minutes. Now once your Mod Podge has completely dried, grab a zip sander or a sanding block. And using a downward motion, sand off the napkins from your little letters. Now once that is complete, I'm going to use a razor blade to actually remove the little bits of napkin over the tops of these letter cutouts. And once these letters were complete, I compared them to the snowflake and the whites were a little bit off. And the white that I had on the snowflake was just a little bit too bright, and I think I needed a little bit more of an ivory tone. So I took my Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and then I also took some Sandstorm and did a little bit of distressing using that. And that matched up a little bit better with the napkin. Now let's go back to the letters. I really want the H and the O and the M and the E to stand out. And so to do this, what I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of Mod Podge around the back side of the letter, and I'm using a little piece of black cardstock, and we're going to just put that right on the back side of each one of these letters. And once you flip the letter over, this just makes it stand out so nice. So let's go ahead and put our snowflake sign together. I'm going to just re-add the twine string that was on the top of our snowflake just so that we have a way of hanging our snowflake. Next, let's position our home pieces over the snowflake. And you have to kind of figure out how you want to line this up. And I decided to line it up more with the corners, but you could totally line this up however you wish. And just to make it a little bit easier when I'm hot gluing this on, I am keeping the letters in place and then just lifting one at a time so it's easier to know where to put that hot glue on the snowflake underneath. And for the finishing touch, we're going to add a beautiful bow to the top of our snowflake. To start this craft out, we are using 3 balloons. We're going to blow them up into 3 different sizes, the size of a lime, lemon, and orange. Next, I'm going to grab some Elmer's school glue and I'm just going to add that to a bowl to mix up a little bit of water into it to thin it out. Now you don't want to add too much water, you just want it to be a little bit thinner than the normal school glue, but still pretty thick. Now, once you're satisfied, go ahead and add your twine to the bowl. And for this twine, I wrapped it around my hand about 25 times. And this will be great for the size of the lime. And what we're doing here is we're just coating that twine really well with the glue. Next step here is we just take that twine with the glue on it and we're just wrapping that around the balloon to make a twine ball. And when you get to the end of the twine, just tuck that piece underneath another piece of twine. Now for the easy step. Once you get the first one done, you just repeat that 2 more times. For the lemon, I did 30 wraps of twine, and for the orange, I did 35 wraps of twine. So once you have all 3 of your balloons wrapped, it's time to pack your patience and let them dry. And mine literally took 2 days to dry. So I just let them sit there. I turned them around just to make sure that they were getting airflow on all sides, but I just left them there to dry. So for our next step, you'll have plenty of time to do this while your balls are drying. And I'm using a canning jar lid, and this was one that I had already used for canning and doesn't seal anymore, so we're able to recycle it and use it in our crafts. And I just keep a stash of these in my craft room to use for different things. So I'm going to paint this with some acrylic paint in the color black, and I'm going to paint both sides. Also going to take a K-cup and I'm going to paint that black as well. Now once the pieces have dried, all we have to do is take some hot glue and hot glue the K-cup to the top of the canning jar lid. And this will make an adorable top hat. Now let's go back to the twine balls that have been drying for the last 2 days. And I'm using my weeding tool and mostly my fingers to remove the balloons from inside of these twine balls. We have those balloons removed from the twine balls. Let's gather all of our pieces and put together our snowman. So I'm using a canning jar ring and a bamboo skewer, and I just cut the tip of the bamboo skewer off so that it would be flat on the bottom, and I'm hot gluing the bottom ball to the canning jar ring. And this is a regular mouth canning jar ring, which is the smaller ring that you normally would use for canning jam. And once the first ball is attached to the canning jar ring, I went ahead and added the skewer to the center of the ball, and then we're just going to add the balls in the size of the balls, so orange, lemon, then lime at the top, and glue everything together. Once you get to the top, if the skewer is cut properly, you won't see it at the top. Next, we're just going to hot glue that little hat on top of our snowman. Now for some final touches, we're going to grab a foam roller and we're going to deconstruct it, and we're going to use that small piece in the center of the foam roller. So if you've used foam rollers in the past, this little piece has a U shape on the end of it. This is the piece that clips the roller into place when you're putting it in your hair. And this U shape fits perfect around the twine on these balls. And for our final touch, I'm using a piece of scrap fabric, and we're making just a cute little scarf for our snowman. This simple snowman is adorable. I cannot wait to display him on a shelf for my winter decor. And if you love this snowman as much as I do, drop a snowman in the comments below. I just love these little cutting boards from the Dollar Tree. And earlier this year, I did a fun decoupage project, and I'll put a link to that video up above here. But I am not going to use this during this winter time, so I wanted to flip it over and do something more wintry on the back side. And I wanted to paint the back side of this, so I'm taking some painter's tape and I'm just going to tape up the twine that's on there to make it easier to paint the back side of this, because I do want this to be a fully versatile reversible sign. Now, using my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, I am going to paint 2 coats of paint over this cutting board. Next, I grabbed this adorable stencil out of my stash. I did not get a chance to use this last year, so I really was excited to use this. And this says sweater weather, and I just love that saying. I think it's so cute. It's great for fall, winter, and Christmas. And I'm just going to stick this over the top of our cutting board here, and using my Waverly chalk paint in the color ink, I am just going to paint over the top. And this stencil is from Amazon, so I will put a link for it in my description box below if you're interested in checking this out. Now, while this paint is still wet, I'm going to go ahead and just pull this stencil off. And once everything is dry, I am going to remove that painter's tape from our little twine bundle at the top. And I thought that this would look nice with a little bow to match like the other side. So I just did a quick finger bow, and I am hot gluing that to the top on top of the twine. Now, our little shelf sitter is ready to display. I just love how this turns out. I think this is a warm and cozy decor piece and will go great from now through February. So we're going to start out with our K-cup and a gold balloon. And I'm just going to trim a little piece of the balloon off of the balloon. And we're going to take this balloon, stretch it out, and wrap it up and around the K-cup. And this will give it a nice polished look without having to paint the K-cup. But if you don't have a balloon, painting the K-cup with some spray paint or some acrylic paint would be just fine. So now I'm going to take a small piece of floral foam, and I'm just going to trim the edges off of this floral foam to make a cylinder to be able to insert this into our K-cup. Now let's set that aside and work on our next step. So let's incorporate the foam roller into our project. We're going to get 1 foam roller and 2 branches from the Dollar Tree. We're going to take those little branches and we're going to wrap those pieces around our little foam roller. So now that our branches are completely wrapped around the roller, if you pull the little circle on the edge of the roller off, there's a wire hook on either side. And you can take those 2 hooks and you can just hook them together and then just wrap any of the extra branches up and around that piece. This makes a nice cute little wreath. Let's set that aside and grab a bamboo stick. And with this bamboo stick, I'm just going to stain it, and I'm using Waverly Antique Wax to do this. I'll set that aside for a few minutes and let that dry. And while that is drying, we'll grab some spray paint, and I'm just going to go ahead and use some white spray paint on our little wreath. And I'm doing both sides of the wreath using just a tiny bit of spray paint. And while the spray paint is still wet, I'm taking some of the fake snow from the Dollar Tree and I'm just going to sprinkle that around, and the spray paint will allow for that to stick and give it a little bit of shimmer. So while our paint is drying, I grabbed this adorable pick from the Dollar Tree, and it's these little white berries, and it's just such a cute pick for the winter time. And I'm going to cut some of the clusters of berries off of this pick to use in my little wreath. So back to our cute little wreath. We're taking the little clusters and using some hot gluing them around the wreath. I'm doing 5 clusters for each side of the wreath, doing both sides so it's able to be reversible. So now let's grab our bamboo skewer that we stained earlier. We're just going to trim it a little bit because we don't need it quite as tall as it is. I'm taking the sharp side and I'm inserting that into our wreath and hot gluing that into place. Now let's take our skewer and insert it into the floral foam that's inside the K-cup. Now let's do some finishing touches. So I'm going to start by using some polyfill, and I'm going to take that and glue that around the base of our floral foam just to give it a snowy look. And for our last embellishment, I'm going to go ahead and glue a sheer bow underneath the wreath. And now we have an adorable topiary that you can put on a tiered tray or on a shelf. And if you're enjoying what you see, please hit that subscribe button below. Let's grab a K-cup and a balloon and this fun ornament set that I got at the Dollar Tree. So we're going to start out by just cutting the tip of the balloon off. And once we've done that, let's stretch the balloon out and stuff the K-cup inside of the balloon so it covers the outside completely. Next, we're going to take a piece of floral foam and stuff that inside of our K-cup. We'll take some hot glue and then hot glue a little bit of polyfill onto the top to make some snow. Now let's take one of our cute trees and we're going to insert that into the floral foam and polyfill. Last step is embellishments. We're going to go ahead and add a gingham bow to the top of our tree. And this adorable quick craft is perfect for your tiered tray. For this craft, we're going to start out with a wood round from the Dollar Tree. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the hanger from this round. Once we've done that, we will go ahead and put our round piece of wood on a paintable surface. And using antique wax from Waverly, we're going to stain this round. And if you haven't done this in the past, I usually paint the whole entire round and then use a baby wipe or paper towel to wipe off any excess paint. And once our round is completely dry, I'm going to grab some Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and I'm going to lightly dry brush on the top side of this round. And it doesn't need to be perfect because you do want a little bit of that wood to show through, but I do want the center of the round to be a thicker coat and then the outside edge more where the wood is showing through. So you can kind of see how I did that here. And once our white paint is completely dry, we'll grab some Mod Podge and matte, and we're just going to add the Mod Podge right onto the round, and we'll paint a nice thick coat over the top. And using my heat tool, I give it a quick start to drying, and then we'll set this aside while we prep our rice paper. So I got this rice paper on Crafty Lure, and this piece of paper was about $2, and you can use it for 2 different crafts. And I'm going to use some water here, and we'll use a paintbrush, and we're just going to paint a circle around this cute little house. And this, once we've gotten that water soaked into the rice paper, we'll just slightly tear it so you get that nice rough edge around our paper. So now that we've finished prepping our rice paper, I use my heat tool and it makes sure that our rice paper is completely dry before we add it to our round. And for our next step here, after we've placed our rice paper on the round where we would like it, I use a piece of parchment paper and a hot iron, and you don't need it on a very high setting. You can put it on a fairly low setting. You don't want steam. And you're just going to iron that piece of rice paper down onto that round. And before you place that rice paper on the round, make sure you have it going the right direction and your hanger holes are still at the top. Next, I grab my zip sander and I go ahead and I just sand in a downward motion the rice paper off of the round. Now, keeping this round on that paintable surface, I'm going to grab my Mod Podge again, and we're going to paint a light coat of Mod Podge over the top just to seal everything in. And once everything is completely dry, I grab a thin paintbrush, and using the back side of it, I poke the holes through for the hanger. Next, as you probably guessed, we're going to add that hanger right back to our round. Could stop there, but I think this needed an embellishment and I wanted to add a ribbon to the top. So I'm using some ribbon that I got from Walmart, and this is some wired ribbon that I found in the Christmas section, and it's a really deep burgundy color. And we're going to just go ahead and make 6 loops, 3 on each side, and squish that together. And using a pipe cleaner, we'll go ahead and wrap that around the center of our bow. And this pipe cleaner makes it really easy to just wrap that around. And once we've done doing that, I go ahead and I'm going to just cut my tails, and I like to dovetail them, so you'll see me doing that here in the video. Now with the cute reindeers in our round sign, I wanted to use this reindeer ribbon that I found at Walmart as well. So I'm just going to loop a little bow onto the top of this big bow. So I just made the motions of a bow, and I just used that pipe cleaner and I just added it to the bow. Nothing fancy, it didn't even tie anything. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cut my tails again. Center of this bow, I decided to put a ornament, and this ornament I got at Dollar Tree, I believe, and it was in one of those 6 packs where you got 6 ornaments for $1.25, and I just glued that right to the center of my bow. But with the more matted look of my sign, this bow was very bright. So I'm taking some spray paint, and I took this bow outside and I just quickly spray painted a little bit of spray paint over the top just to matte down the color of our bow. I needed to set that aside to dry for about a half an hour. Once we had a completely dry ribbon, I was able to go ahead and use some hot glue and hot glue it to the top of our sign. And now our fabulous sign is ready to hang. I love how this turned out. Let me know what you think in the comments below. So I found these beautiful signs in the home decor section at the Dollar Tree, and I thought these would make a really good piece for a garland. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start by deconstructing this piece. So to deconstruct this piece, I did have to twist the pieces around, break the hot glue that was attaching it to that metal rod in the center there. And for those stubborn pieces, I did use a Phillips screwdriver to just pry them off. And I like to do things in odd numbers, so I ended up needing 2 signs so I could get 5 pieces to make 1 garland. Let's grab our sander. I use a zip sander, but a sanding block would work just fine. And I'm just going to sand down the letters that are on these pieces so that nothing is raised, so when I paint over them, we won't see them. I also went ahead and sanded the sides of these pieces just to take any of that hot glue or glue that was still on them, so everything was nice and clean. Now I placed these on a paintable surface, and to keep them from moving around, I'm using some painter's tape underneath each block just to help stabilize everything. Now let's grab our Waverly chalk paint in the color white and go ahead and paint a nice coat over the tops of all of these blocks. And I want this to be really bright white, so we're going to paint 2 coats of paint. So I had this macrame rope from the Dollar Tree in the color gray, and well, my dog got into it, and let's just say it's a little bit of a tangled mess, but we were able to untangle it and use it for this craft. So we're going to start by just hot gluing the back of the rope to the back side of the block, and then we're going to wrap this rope around the top triangle portion of the block, and we'll do a single wrap and then add another little bit of hot glue, and we'll continue doing it till we get all the way up to the top. And at the very top of this block, we just go ahead and kind of do a little coil at the top with some hot glue and then tap that down, and it looks like a little beanie hat. And with the back side of a paintbrush, I'm using some black acrylic paint, and I'm just going to put some dots on here to make eyes for our snowman. And next, using the color pumpkin and Waverly chalk paint, I'm just going to paint on a little carrot nose. Now, using the back side of our paintbrush and some black acrylic paint, we're going to use the same technique and paint a mouth on our snowman. Then I repeated this step for 4 additional snowmans. So I didn't have any mini pom-poms in my stash, so I thought, what could I use to make some pom-poms? And I saw my yarn over in my stash, and I thought, well, this might work really well. So we're just going to cut them out into little pieces about the size of a tater tot. And once we get the 5 pieces cut, we're just gonna add some hot glue to the top of each one of the hats and apply one of those small pieces of yarn. Now that we have our snowman complete, let's grab some beads and let's put together our garland. And so I'm doing a combination of different beads. Most of these I got at the Dollar Tree, the white ones and the black ones, but the silver ones I believe I got on Amazon, and they're linked in my Amazon store below. And I'm going to use some really thin twine to attach everything. And we're doing a pattern of white, black, white, silver, white, but you can do whatever pattern you'd like. And we're just going to string our little snowman in between each one of these patterns. And now that we have everything strung on our garland, I wanted to go ahead and make some tassels for either side of our garland. So we're going to use that macrame rope again, and we're just going to wrap it. And I used my hands for this, but you could use a piece of cardboard. I wrapped it around 10 times, and then I'm just going to tie a little knot around the top there. And then take the rope and just kind of continue wrapping that around and just hide the knot. And then I just tuck the rope underneath itself so that it just stays in place and everything looks great. And you can cut off any extra, and then we just cut the bottom pieces off so it looks like a little tassel on the bottom. Now for that top loop of our tassel, I grabbed a paintbrush and I'm just going to stick that through so it kind of holds everything in place. And since this is macrame rope, I did want to kind of comb out the pieces of rope on the bottom part of this tassel. So to do that, you untwist everything, and then once everything is untwisted, I use just a regular comb and I just comb everything through. Once you have everything combed out the way you like, I just trim the bottom just to give it a little haircut to make everything look nice. So to attach the garland to the tassel, I tie this string from the garland to the paintbrush, and then I'm going to use the paintbrush as a needle and just pull everything right through. And then you can just tie a knot at the end. Then repeat and do this for the other side of your garland. And look at how adorable these snowmen turned out. They'll be perfect for your mantle or on a tiered tray. So our next craft here is inspired by our playlist, Baby It's Cold Outside. I also really like the song, Baby It's Cold Outside. So when I found this stencil a few weeks ago on Amazon, I thought, oh, I have to get it. And this stencil came in a 6-pack of multiple different Christmas and winter stencils. Using redesigned chalk paste in the color Blue Boar, and I'm going to just squeegee the paste over the top of this stencil. And if you haven't used these types of stencils before, they're a self-adhesive stencil that can be washed and reused. Now I'm going to set aside the sign to dry, and while we do that, let's make a bow. We're going to start out with 6 inches of ribbon for this bow. And we're going to make a quick little loop and hot glue that right on the back side. Next, we're going to cut another 6-inch piece of ribbon. I'm going to take that piece of ribbon and we're going to fold it in the shape of a V, and this will be the tails of our bow. Now for this next step, I like to use pipe cleaner. And what I do is I take my little V shape and I scrunch up the center of my loop and I attach the two together using a piece of pipe cleaner. And I just wrap that around 2 or 3 times and then twist that pipe cleaner. And once I've done that, I cut the ends of the pipe cleaner off of that bow, and we're going to go ahead and cut another small 1-inch piece of ribbon. And using that little 1-inch piece of ribbon, I'm going to fold that into thirds and hot glue that up and around that piece of pipe cleaner to cover everything up. And once you've fluffed your bow is ready to be glued onto whatever you're working on. Going back to our sign, now that our paint has dried, I'm using some Jolene finishing wax, and I'm using a lint-free cloth, and I'm just going to wipe that over the top of our paint, and this will help seal everything in. And once that is dried, I take some hot glue, and I'm going to hot glue our ribbon along the top of this sign. And now our little sign is ready to hang or put on a tiered tray. So I've walked by this woodberry leaf a few times at the Dollar Tree, and I keep thinking, well, this would be really cute, but what would I use it for? So I decided to buy that, and we're going to make a Christmas tree out of it. So I found this little just Christmas tree topper star at the Dollar Tree as well, and we're just going to remove the little corkscrew on the bottom here. And once we remove the corkscrew, save that for a bonus craft after this one. Set that aside and let's start decorating our leaf. I place it on a paintable surface, and I just tend to cut up some cardboard and I leave it in my craft room, and it works great for painting. I'm going to remove the hanger from this leaf as well. Now, I'm grabbing some Waverly antique wax, and we're just going to wipe this wax all over the leaf. And once we have it stained on both sides, I set it aside to dry. And now I'm going to grab my chalk paint in the color plaster, and I'm using a round brush for this. And we're just going to dry brush some snow all over our leaf. And to make it look more like snow, I'm just tapping the brush like so. So it's just tap, tap, tap all over our tree. And I'm doing both sides just in case you want to make this reversible. Now, once our tree is completely dry, we're going to attach the star from earlier, and I'm just bending it just to make sure it fits perfect up at the top of this tree, and we're using some hot glue to attach. And since the star is kind of hollow in the back side of it, I am going to flip the tree over and just add a little bit more hot glue, kind of like a little wall, to make sure everything stays into place. Now, I did put a lot of hot glue back here, so I let that dry for about 10 minutes. Let's make a stand for our tree. I'm using some of this foam from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just cutting a small square out of it. And we're going to have to round out the edges to get it to fit in our little container. And this container I did find at the Dollar Tree. It is a candle holder, and it was in the candle section. And I'm just going to try to get that to sit down into that container. And once we do that, we're going to grab some hot glue, and I just kind of squirt the hot glue down there and move the foam into place. And then I do that again on the other side. I lift it up slightly and add some more hot glue. So for our next step here is we're just going to insert our tree into that piece of foam. And then I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue around the edges there just to make sure it stays into place. Now let's dress up our container. I'm using some burlap, and this burlap I did get at the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to cut a square big enough to be able to wrap this around the candle holder, and I'm going to just trim any extra stuff off of the burlap just to make sure it looks a little bit cleaner. And once we get that done, I'm going to take some ribbon, and this ribbon I got at Hobby Lobby, and we're going to just wrap the burlap up and around the container, and then using the ribbon, which will also help keep everything in place very well, is we're just going to wrap that around and make a knot. And once you have your knot in place, we just make a really nice bow, and then we can trim any of the excess ribbon and dovetail the tails. And here is the final reveal of our mini Christmas tree. I think this turned out so great. It's very rustic and fun. If you like what you're seeing, please hit that subscribe button below so you don't miss the next craft.